There to Laurie Schwab with the New York Cosmos.
Johnson. Still Johnson. Jones, this looks dangerous for Brisbane Lions. Jones, a good cross. Johnson. Arnold's forward, so's Manus Lamond, still Robbie Slater. Twisting and turning, getting that one across. Lamond! Manus Lamond!
Play on, says the referee. Hayes is onside again. Shot! It's in the net! What a great goal by Graham Hayes!
No call! Score! Salamini for Cole. Cole on the run. Shoots. 2-0.
Lazanovsky with the free kick. Launches a rocket! Trimboli. What vision!
Blasts.
Yes! That's it!
Miljevic.
Beautiful goal! Here's Bozanic. They haven't! They might have won it!
Teammate from Heidelberg United and another local product, Charlie Ankus. How do you feel, Charlie?
A bit nervous, but I think I'll get used to it. Get used to it and really put in 100%.
Welcome to another episode of Chatting with Cotsy. I've got a special guest who's working for the FFA at the moment, a young fella who was born in Shepparton and currently living in Lennox Head. Is that still correct?
It is. He is very lucky right now.
Absolutely. Welcome, Ben Roche.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. We obviously met at a football function, soccer function, whichever is politically correct for whichever members of the audience. We met at the soccer, I think it was early on in the year at Western United when they had the function with the Socceroos, Matildas, obviously in your case also the Pararoos were invited. A nice little function there which culminated in a pretty exciting game from what I can remember. There was some goals and excitement. And ever since we'd met, I'd made a mental note to follow up and make sure we have a chat in whatever forum we possibly could. And I've done a little bit of research on the Pararoos and obviously yourself, but that's why you're here to tell the story. But for the sake of the audience and for a lot of the people in football who've heard of the Pararoos, like myself, but don't understand the rules and regulations that go with that type of football. Could you just elaborate on that bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Pararoos are our national football team for athletes with cerebral palsy, acquired brain injury or symptoms resulting from stroke, and was originally created in Australia in preparation for the Sydney Paralympics in 2000. So we play a modified version of the game. So we play on a smaller pitch, 50 by 70 metres, and smaller goals also, and it's seven-a-side football with no offside. So there's no hiding. It's quite a fast-paced game. We play 30-minute halves, and has the ability to be quite high-scoring. In terms of the disability aspect, cerebral palsy is the most common physical disability in childhood in Australia, and child's born every 15 hours or so. And in terms of acquired brain injuries, there's close to 800,000 people in Australia. So for us, we've got our version of the game that, we like to sort of reach into a bit of a different demographic. So, yeah.
Sure. In terms of competition, what happened? Who decides, or how is the testing done to determine if you can and can't play in this type of sport?
Yeah, so all athletes that take part in disability sports and have to be classified into a certain class. So for football, it's broken into 3 classes, so a 1, a 2 and a 3. A 1 being someone who's the most affected, a 2 being sort of mid-range, mild, but it's still prominent, and then a 3 is the mildest. And what we do when we go to a tournament is we actually go into a room with a range of classifiers from all over the world, and they perform their testing and they put you into a class. And then when it comes to being on the field is you can only have certain amount of each class on the field at one time. So you must have a minimum of 1-1 on the field, and you can have no more than 1-3 on the field. So you can't necessarily just go out with your strongest squad. So for our head coach, Kai Lama, it's quite a detailed process in selecting your squad, and even selecting your extended squad before departing is making sure you've got enough depth in each of the classifications, which also adds a really different element too, is when you get to the tournament and, potentially someone's classification might not be what you would expect, which is quite often happens. We've had players classified out because they haven't met particular criteria. It definitely adds a really different element to the game. So they're looking for particular catches in your body and things like that fit within their classifying system.
Okay, so it can vary from tester to tester, as simple as that.
Yeah, and they've really tried to tighten up the process, and that's why you often find that there's someone from each nation involved in the classifying process. That's really important that it's done fairly. So there's the component that's, you're on a physio bed and looked at and poked and prodded, and then there's the element of on-field and what your body's capable of doing. So, for instance, for myself, my cerebral palsy affects the whole right-hand side of my body. So I'm predominantly left-footed, and it shows when it comes to that on-field aspect. So they're looking at every little aspect, and then they'll review you in the game as well, because they might show differently again. Yeah.
Okay. So what category do you generally come under?
So, funnily enough, I've fallen into every category in my career, but I'm now locked in as a 2. So, 2s, you can have as many on the field at once, as long as you've got your 1 and only 1-3. So for me, I'm quite lucky in that, there's a bit of flexibility in my role.
Okay. A layman's question. So I've refereed mixed futsal, right? Mixed.
Yep.
So you've got to, I can't remember, got to have a minimum of X amount of girls on the field at any given time, as part of the rules. That's generally pretty easy to determine. From a Pararoos or Paralympics CP soccer, as it is, a referee, how does the referee know people's categories, or who keeps an eye on that?
Yeah, so it's monitored by a few people. So the classification will happen in the lead up to the tournament, and on your match sheet and when you're making substitutes, your class is listed as well.
Okay.
So when you go to make that substitute, you need to ensure that you're not pulling off the wrong person, or you still meet the right criteria.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you have the classifiers watching from the sidelines as well. Yeah.
So there are more than just the referee's job to monitor that.
Yeah, and it can be really quite a daunting experience, particularly for the younger players coming through. You prepare for the tournament as a particular class. You might then get classified, and it's not what you expected. They then review you in the game, and they'll walk up to you straight off the pitch as you walk off the pitch and go, "Yep, this is your class now." And then, it's sort of the first thing you hear, and you sort of move forward from there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because obviously that can affect your game time and
absolutely
what contribution you can or can't make purely because of the category, rather than because you're a forward or a defender, or what you can actually bring as a footballer.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many different elements to it that make it quite a challenging.
If it wasn't already difficult enough.
Yeah, exactly right.
Absolutely. Okay, cool. All right. Well, I'm glad you cleared that up for me, and it was far more detailed than I actually had researched and expected. Thank you. Now, more importantly, let's go down the Benny Roche story. And as well I do with all of my guests, we go way back in time. Now, I believe you were born in Shepparton. Is that right, country boy?
Yeah, that's right. Born in Shepparton, but only there for a couple of years before moving to sort of southeast Melbourne.
Yeah, okay. And stock standard, first soccer memory?
Really good question. I think in terms of a simple one is just being in the schoolyard and just seeing, older kids playing, just going, oh yeah, I need to be involved in that, and then getting a jersey as a birthday present one year.
What team was it?
Liverpool.
Good.
Yeah, got a good amount of wear. So I think that instigated a little something, and then I started playing when I was in prep in grades. So I was 6 years old, and instantly sort of hooked from there.
Good. The addiction, once it kicks in, can't shake it. Absolutely.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Exactly right.
So tell us about club football and your first experience. How much later did that come about?
Yeah, so I started at Ringwood City and played my first probably 5 or 6 years there, and then moved across to Croydon City I think it simply became my age group and the availability at that time. And I had some pretty interesting challenges in junior football in terms of actually being given a fair go and getting the minutes that I wanted and felt I deserved. I was probably often judged for my disability rather than my ability of playing football. So I found that quite frustrating, and having the right coach and people with the right understanding was really important.
Did it vary from coach to coach?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember having, particular coaches that really didn't change anything for them. They, which was really important. Then others that it was too hard basket. We're just not going to worry about him. We'll just, we'll give him a couple of minutes at the end and, we'll be okay. So for me, that was, I look back at it now, and for me, that was a good thing in the sense that it gave me a lot of fire and a lot of fuel to want to push and challenge myself and prove a point. That's for sure.
And probably teach you to challenge authority going forward as well.
Yeah, if you stand up for what you believe in and work hard for the things you want.
Okay. It would have built up also a resilience in you that perhaps you wouldn't have had to look for if in a different situation, but I think it would have helped you long term. Can you see that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with what was going on in football, and then similar challenges being faced in school and socially and things like that, it all worked together to shape a lot of what I've gone on to do, and a lot of what drives me. I was quite lucky. I got introduced. I saw the Pararoos take part in the Sydney Paralympics, and the year after that, after a quick family trip to AIS, I left my name and number in the hopes that it would get to the right person, and eventually got invited into a camp because there was no pathway at that time. Victoria. Got invited to a camp, and then I met these guys that had these same challenges, and they were grown men that were, successful in their careers, in their football. And for me, I was like, this is where I belong, and this is something I want to be a part of.
Yeah. Just going back to, because you're about 12 years old when you went to the AIS. We'll get there. Just with kids, coaches, and junior football, kids are cruel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Kids can't help it. That's their nature. They're honest. They're straight. There's no filter, and you get what you see is generally what you get. But looking back now, because you would have been hurt by kids and by coaches' decisions, but looking back now, just in hindsight, which one was worse? Rejection of a coach or the non-filtered approach from a kid?
I think looking back at it now, kids are kids, and that's, I've had a lot of people come to me since go, I've apologized or, things like that, where I think adults maybe should have known a little better back then. I had an experience early on where I was actually, had an opposition coach abuse me for my disability. The wording he used was highly inappropriate, and that really hurt, particularly at a young age. I was like, how can this grown man be doing this? What's going on? So, I look back at it now. I would have liked people to be more open-minded, but a lot of it just comes from a lack of knowledge and a bit of fear of, asking the question. So now, I sort of changed my approach and put it on the table early when I meet people and give them the opportunity to understand.
Okay. Yeah. And I'm not trying to highlight the disability here, but obviously we're really talking about the challenges that you would have faced, and the fact that, being left out and not given game time by your own coach is just ridiculous in itself. But for an opposition coach to target any player in the opposition for any reason, for whatever it may be, their hair colour, the colour of their boots, their size, their weight, their height, whatever, is just so. And I've seen it in junior football, and I kind of think, what are you doing? You should barely be talking to your own kids, your own team like that. But to actually pick someone out in the opposition for any reason, it's just the strangest people get around in our game, and sometimes unchallenged. Quick question, because I'm a vindictive person sometimes. Was that person challenged by anyone?
It went to a tribunal.
Cool.
And
that makes me feel better.
Look, and I can't remember what the final decision was, but I believe he had to stop coaching.
Oh, good.
For a certain amount of time. So.
No, that's a better full stop to this story than I was just hoping you weren't going to say no one challenged him, and he, because the next week it would have been someone else's turn to cop it, which is
exactly right. And so I'm a big believer in when things like that happen, I'll very quickly stand up. And even recently in club football, I've joined a new team this year, and we had an experience where the opposition said some racial comments, and I was so proud of my team because everyone just stopped dead in their tracks and said, no, we don't stand for that. And we wouldn't keep playing until he left the field. And to me, that's come a long way. That wouldn't have happened years ago. So
excellent.
Progression.
Progression is good. We're learning and developing. I love it. So I've read about, and you talked about the visit to the AIS. Why was it just a trip to Canberra and you fitted in a tour to the AIS? Is that how it basically went?
Yeah, pretty much. It was actually my grandfather was selected for a thing called Peoplescape, where they actually put 500 cardboard cutouts of individuals in Australia that had done some pretty awesome things, and my granddad was selected for it. So mum and dad came, and grandparents and everyone was there, and we, I'd been having seen the Paralympics the year before, had seen athletics, and so to go to the AIS and see where everything was being done at that time was pretty exciting. And we literally went to the front counter and said, I've got cerebral palsy, what's available? Here's our details. I love football. And then, just a little while later, got a call from the head coach at the time, and was flown up to Canberra and took part in a camp. So,
and so you mentioned it earlier, which was going to be one of my questions. There's no organised pathway for cerebral palsy. So you can play in a club side and then be chosen, or you don't necessarily have to play for a club side. Is that?
Yeah, so that's been a big focus of development for us. So after being the only Victorian for a lot of years, I launched a Victorian CP football program. And now most states have programs, and we compete at the nationals each year, which is an opportunity to be selected for the national team. And further from that, we've now launched Pararoos development centres for younger kids. And I worked closely with Football Victoria on their All Abilities League, which was, a lot of work in making sure all disabilities and that could play in competitive games.
Yeah.
But the goal with our national team is that you're playing club football at a high level outside of representing the Pararoos. So in New South Wales, a lot of our boys are within the NPL setup. They might train with the younger youth program because it's more their pace, but they need to be playing at the highest level possible to sort of grow and develop. Yeah, but there's no regular CP football available besides maybe our domestic camps and nationals. Yeah.
Okay. How large is your training squad for the Pararoos as like a collection. Where does how big is the pool to choose from when it finally comes to going to a tournament?
Yeah, so when it comes to nationals, you might have 80 to 100 athletes, and then Kai often initial stages will select between 25 to 30 for a camp, and then we take 14 players away generally.
Okay.
So,
and those ages range from?
Yeah, so you can represent at 15 in our competition, and our captain David Barber is 41 now. So
a young 41.
Yeah, absolutely. Still quicker than me. So just
okay. We'll get to David and his successful long career, the skipper as he's known. Okay, so from 15 on, you can play effectively senior CP Open international football.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And below that age group, is there now a school of, not necessarily, but a group of kids that have been looked at in advance, waiting for them to turn 15, maybe project players? I don't know.
Yeah, that's something we're looking. So within our state programs, you often find that younger age group. So for nationals, we actually can bring in some younger players for the experience. But that's a big area that we're looking to develop, is with the development centres, is from 6 to sort of 12 or 14 there's that regular contact, and you're working on those basic things from a young age.
Yeah.
So that's a focus area with that. Is that for a while there was that sort of gap between playing junior football and then stepping into playing with the Pararoos. So yeah.
Okay.
Quick area of focus, that's for sure.
Right. We'll get back to the Pararoos, but I want to talk about you specifically and how football has helped develop you. Now, you're currently working at the FFA. What's your official title?
I am the national teams coordinator.
Okay, cool. But part of, I guess, your role would include inclusiveness, trying to get the CP football working, like you're saying, at state levels. A lot of that stemming from the background and what you've done playing from football. Without football, let's go back to the 12-year-old, may not have ended up at the AIS and may not have met these wonderful people and didn't get introduced to it. What do you think, or how different would life have been without football? Or how do they fit in together now?
Yeah, it's a scary thought, I think. It's such a big part of my life, it's work, it's the weekends, coaching my son as well. For me, it was not only about playing, it was a form of therapy for me. It was really important, particularly with cerebral palsy, is you can go backwards very quickly, you can tighten up, and your mobility can really be restricted. So keeping moving is important, and have a game that I loved so much and wanted to do constantly, made that therapy aspect a lot easier.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where, I definitely wouldn't be where I am without it, that's for sure. I don't know what direction I would have gone in. I wouldn't change it for the world, to be honest. I wouldn't change having a disability. I wouldn't, for me, it's the best thing that's happened.
So now when you're talking to kids or coaching or giving advice, knowing what you know, how crucial is it for you to get your message across? And how do you get that message across? Because it's like any coach at any level of any sport, you don't always convince the players, the students, the pupils, like a teacher. You don't win everyone over. But in your case, I'm sure that there's a part of you that feels like you can't afford not to.
Yeah, I probably took on a bit of a mission to really advocate for inclusion and diversity and the fact that the game should be available to everyone. For the game that is around the world, it hasn't always been available in a lot of areas. So that became a really big driving force for me. And I think even just the ability to stand in front of a young boy or girl with cerebral palsy and they go, oh, there's a pathway for me, I think that's really important. Pararoos lost funding back in 2015, 2016, And the biggest driving force for me was that overnight there was going to be young boys and girls across Australia, whether they knew about the Pararoos yet or not,
Yep.
that there was another opportunity that was taken away. Someone made a comment, it's like, why would you fund something so obscure? I was like, what's obscure about it? It's football. It's nothing more than football. It's just football. It doesn't need to be complicated. And that really fired me up, I think, because, I knew there was kids in these states that loved the idea of representing Australia, and it was going to stop. So raising awareness has been really important. Having those conversations with federations and on every level, and clubs as well, helping them and guide them through what they can do to support it. And some of the programs now are exceptional and beyond what I could ever believe happening. And, in Victoria, for example, the CP program's gone from having 4 or 5 kids to up to 30 at times. But the community they've created for one another, particularly through tough times like Victoria's going through now,
Yep.
Is phenomenal. And even the parents as well, having that support network, it's beyond what I could have ever expected.
Okay. So who decides that they can halt the funding, stop the funding, and why do they make that decision? What's the criteria they're using?
So originally when we lost funding in 2015, it was due to the Australian Sports Commission's winning edge policy. So if they didn't think you could win a medal at the Paralympic Games,
Right.
They redirected the funding essentially. So we went from having a very small budget, I think it was, say 150 grand for the year, which would get you to 1 international tournament and 2 camps. That sort of stopped overnight. So once that happened, we worked with FFA to set up tax deductible giving through the Australian Sports Foundation to get us on the way to continue our program. And so we constantly have to fundraise and find funding so we can keep doing what we're doing, whilst trying to continue to grow opportunities and not just get to a tournament but compete when we're up against the top 8 teams are professional teams. So.
Okay. You're underplaying this story big time, so I'm gonna make you tell me one way or another.
Yeah.
With the funding leading into, I think, is it for the qualification series for the 2019 World Champs, you had to fly to Denmark?
Yeah, so 2016 we had to get to Denmark, but roughly 12 weeks out from Denmark, we found out that we just hadn't got enough funding together. We hadn't raised enough. We weren't going to go, and without going
because
to Denmark,
the funding had been stopped by the Australian Sports Commission.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had a really short time frame, and without getting to Denmark, we then couldn't have qualified for World Champs in Argentina.
Okay.
And so what we did, and it was, I'd actually relocated to Melbourne that week that we found out that funding wasn't there, and I'd also had a baby 5 weeks early, and I was in a house with a mattress on the floor because our furniture had disappeared somewhere, and we got the letter to say that the funding wasn't there. And I was just like, I looked at my wife and I was like, we need to do something about this. And so a couple of the players from Sydney flew down to me, and we worked with a really good friend of mine, Kenny, and pulled a fundraising video together within a day and a half, and then sent that out to everyone.
Who flew down?
So we had Ben Atkins and Jack Williams.
Yeah.
Flew down.
Yeah. And who were you working with in Melbourne for the video?
A guy called Kenny Bauer, who was a long-time friend of mine that was a whiz with the camera and made beautiful videos. And I said, I want to try and capture what this means. And we put a little 2-minute video together and sent it where we wanted to send it. And I started ringing big companies and trying to hassle as many people as possible. And then,
what sort of time frame did you have to raise this money?
Well, it was 12 weeks to the tournament, I think it was, but we needed to know by a certain point so we could actually book flights. And
so it was about 2 days, wasn't
Yeah, it was a quick turnaround. Like we didn't have long.
Yeah. And who
and then
did you send that video to? Like people like?
To be honest, like I tried to meet with big banks, retail companies, anyone I could think of. And then with the help of FFA, we actually put on a dinner and tried to bring, an intimate dinner, private, big people in and go show them the video and just really emphasize what this was about. And yeah, luckily we raised the money, we hit the deadline, and
what did you raise?
160,000.
Okay. In a matter of what?
In a couple of weeks, yeah. So we worked quickly, and I'm really proud of what we achieved and the effort, the boys put into making it happen. And from there, we got to Denmark. We were very underdone. We weren't particularly fit. Our attention had been on raising the money. So our first game was up against Spain, and we needed to beat Spain to continue the process. And we were up 1-0 at half time. We weren't playing exceptionally, but we were up. And yeah, I was lucky enough to score in the second half. And I think all the emotion came out then. I just remember screaming from the top of my lungs. There was no better feeling. There wasn't long left in the game, and we got in the change room afterwards, and I just remember hugging the coach and just, I knew all that effort was worth it. Absolutely.
Congratulations on not the win.
Yeah.
On the field, off the field. That's just a sensational effort, mate. That is just brilliant. It's a great story. And I still think it's a little bit undersold, underdone. The importance of it to a national team and a sport that's so important to us. But to actually just not accept that, one, funding's not available, because it's easy to go, well, okay, we'll down tools and we'll have to accept the decision. Very Australian to say, no, I'm not going to accept that. And now all of a sudden, the resilience that was building up at Ringwood City, at Croydon City, with arsehole coaches, both who coached you and were coaching against you, that resilience is building up, and the character of the person and their love for what they do and their love for the sport is just going, well, I'm not prepared to accept this. So you weren't prepared to accept it and take it and just go, well, that's what it is, were you? And neither was the team.
No, absolutely. I think, all had faced similar challenges, and just the idea that someone might not have the same opportunities that I had, I just didn't sit well with me. And that's still a big driving force now, like, we still fundraise, but we're in a much better position. We're developing players across the country. I'm so proud of how far it's come, and the people that are working on it behind the scenes, their dedication is just beyond what you could ever expect from anyone.
Great stuff, mate. Well done. Congratulations. Let's head to the Pararoos and to Old Man Barber. Now, he's been there since you first set eyes on him back when you were a 12-year-old.
Yep.
And he's still going around, and according to you, not even a hint of retirement. Tell me about this great man who's played over 100 times for Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. We played a home game in Sydney last year for the first time since the Paralympics, and it was David's 100th game, so it was perfect opportunity. And I think everyone was
that again?
Canada.
And there was a good crowd there that day.
Yeah, it was a great crowd. We had over 1,000 there at Cromer Park in Manly, and for me, if that was me, that would have been the perfect send-off. Family there, 100 games, home soil. So I was like, so what's next? He's like, well, I'm not done. And I was like, yep, that's the David I know. And yeah, I was lucky. David was one of the first people I met at my first camp and took me under his wing. And he was considered one of the best in the world. He'd won up the Paralympics the year before, and he was just an unstoppable athlete. And he was the leader that the team needed. So yeah, still going strong. I think he's 41 now, and at that time when he was younger, he was playing representative able body for Queensland, and just, you know, he set the bar so high for all of us to push for what we wanted.
Yeah. He seems to set a very good example, and having watched the documentary of the world champs, and he was suspended going into that first game.
Yeah.
And the footage of him during the game and after that game, and he was happy to take responsibility for the loss.
Yeah.
And ownership. He owned the fact that he'd got a red card. He's probably a bit stiff to get the red card, to be quite honest. But he took ownership, and he didn't shy away from it. And I guess that's what you want from a leader, is to be honest and open to the group, and just say, well, you know what, yeah, look, it wasn't his fault. We can see that as sporting people, but he's still prepared to say, I'll take responsibility. So it sets the bar high for the rest of the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think players like David and Chris Pine and Ben Atkins, some of the older guys, they've really set strong values within the team that, you know, they try and really instill in the younger players coming through, and particularly because of our situation with funding and everything else, we need to be dedicated. We need to be driven by those values, and open and honest with people, and open and honest with each other within the team, and support one another, is because, you know, there are challenges happening, and it's about working together. And if we stick with that, then good things will come.
No, that's good. And again, going back to the documentary, as a purpose of research for me, young, well, I call him young because to me everyone's young. Ben Atkins seems to be the emotional barometer of the team. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and obviously, like everyone, is, you know, fully committed. But he's great in terms of that documentary. It was great to talk to after each game or before each game. So it really was an open, honest appraisal of where everyone was standing, feeling.
Yeah. I think that's really important, is and particularly being able to share that is, again, with all of us are so open and honest with each other, but Ben in particular he's that player that will connect with other players emotionally and be that support network, because he's comfortable and he knows what it means to him as well. And I think that documentary sums it up really well, is what it means to everyone, really.
No, it was a great story, well put together, and we'll leave a link to that at the end of the interview. It's important that anyone who watches this goes on and watches the documentary, because the two together tie up superbly, I would imagine. So going back to the Canada game, which I watched a fair bit of, you said that was the first international that we'd had on home soil, or for a long time?
Since the Paralympic Games.
So a long time. Is there any plan to, obviously taking COVID into account, we get that, but obviously to continue to have home games and maybe move them interstate as such?
Absolutely. So we actually worked with FIFA on making that game happen. They have a thing called FIFA Forward Funding, and we spent a year working with FIFA to secure that funding, with the intention of having the home friendly to promote the game and grow and develop. So hopefully with increased funding and potentially some generous supporters, that the goal would be to make that a regular occurrence. 20 years is too long, and for me, I'd still be very keen to have something in Melbourne, and where all my family is. So definitely on the cards again, and hopefully we can align it with launching a women's program too, and go from there.
How far down the track are you from maybe getting? I mean, again, COVID is killing everything, but how far down the track is the women's program?
Not too far. It's something we've been working for a while. We actually hosted last year in Australia. We hosted a camp for the whole Asia Oceania region for girls all over, and we had about, I think, 26 girls come into that, which was phenomenal. And watching a 7v7 game was just the best. I knew that, they've got a long future ahead. So hopefully within the next year or so, we can get that happening.
Okay. All right. I want to go back to the documentary because I think it was the game against Portugal, which I think you won 2-0.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you scored an absolute cracker. Now, I didn't know that you're a Liverpool supporter, but if you are, then obviously you could be a Harry Kill fan.
Yeah.
Harry scored one of those, I think, for Leeds.
Yeah.
Against Sheffield Wednesday. Chipped the keeper with the outside of his left foot. And when I saw you do it, in a smaller goal, mind you, slightly smaller target. So the degree of difficulty a lot higher. And I went, that's Harry's goal against Sheffield Wednesday.
Yeah.
Have you seen that Harry goal?
I have.
Yeah.
I've watched it many times. It was an interesting game against Portugal. I'd been very unwell before it. I'd actually gotten some food poisoning or something and hadn't had much sleep. Spent the night on the toilet and wasn't well at all in the first half. I don't remember much.
You shouldn't have played.
Yeah, I shouldn't have played. Absolutely. I'd lived off maybe 2 dry biscuits but I was desperate to play and Kai gave me the chance. He goes, look, you can come on and come off after 15 minutes if you want. You know, it's like, I want you out there, but it's your decision. I said, yeah, I'll play. I'll see how I go. Mm-hmm. I got through the first half and, looking back at the footage, it was pretty terrible. Really struggled with controlling the ball, anything like that. And, just happened to receive a nice ball from Ben Atkins across the field and beat a player and just, hit it nicely and it paid off. So something I'll remember for a long time, that's for sure.
Absolutely. A cracking goal. And I watched the doco and I saw a lot of goals, but I thought to myself, that is an absolute, I love a chip.
Yeah.
I'm very susceptible to a lovely chip. But if you add the fact that it's the outside of the foot, smaller goal, and the degree of difficulty, highly skilled, great goal, mate. Loved it. Absolutely one of my favourite goals of all time.
Me too. Thank you.
I bet. So tell me about, it's hard to talk about yourself, but you are now a role model, like it or not, for everyone in general, but for CP kids especially, right? And especially CP kids that may want to look into sport and they're at the crossroads. How does that feel with you? Because from the outside looking in, you seem really comfortable being that person, but personally?
Yeah. I think at times it's I don't want to say tiring. There's times where you feel like you can't fill those shoes and you put a lot of pressure on yourself. Obviously, I was lucky when I first went into the Pararoos to be surrounded by such good role models and guys that I still look up to this day. And I think if I were to just play the game and walk away and not have done the off-field stuff, I wouldn't have achieved the success. I look at a lot of the successes of what's happened off the field as well.
Yeah.
And the off-field stuff pushes me as a player. I'm 31 now, and in the last 2 years, I've played some of my best games, I think, and it's been very driven by that desire to set an example and create a professional outfit in the Pararoos. So I enjoy the aspect of being a role. I enjoy when I see kids succeed or challenge themselves. I think that's really special. I enjoy seeing programs that I've had a small part in develop and grow and bring new kids in, and I enjoy seeing those kids put on a captain's armband for a state game or whatever that may be, and grow into young adults that have successful jobs and social lives and things like that. So I'm very lucky. Very lucky to have that opportunity.
Okay. Well, again, from the outside looking in, you seem to fit the mould as a role model pretty comfortably. And the fact that you've taken ownership of the whole project, I guess you wouldn't have set out initially to do the whole lot. You would have been happy to play soccer and have a job, and now you're combining the two. And the fact that your self-assessment is that you're playing better football as you get a little bit older, and the whole package is coming together. There's obviously a sense of it's all fulfilling for you, therefore one looks after the other. I think I read something earlier on, when you were young, you felt like you were highly strung, and had to learn to deal with situations where you clearly seem to be dealing with a whole lot of pressures, much better as we do as adults, but more comfortable with it.
Yeah, I think so. I've gotten much better at handling situations, I think, and maybe with age and experience, but also having a good support network and, looking after myself. But I still have very high expectations, and particularly because I've put so much into trying to develop the Pararoos and things like that. Like I want people, when they come in, to give it everything. Like, I'm a big believer in no free rides. Everyone pulls their weight, and I think that's important. And by that, you learn the importance of the program, and hopefully that filters on. You create more role models, you create more opportunities, and it grows from there.
Yeah. The team itself has the coach, Kai Lament, and the support network from, assistants and physios and whatever. They play a huge part into it. Talk us through how they help you guys on and off the field.
Yeah, so Kai's been head coach since 2015. He's an ex-professional player from Germany, but he's been in Australia for maybe 15 years or so, and incredible coach to play under, and I think really gets the most out of their players, and it's really clear in our playing style and what we're going to achieve. As a coach, phenomenal, and then off the field as well. He was the first one to ring when COVID happened, and COVID was unfolding, and goes, are you okay financially? How's the family? If I can do anything to help you, let me know. And I think that's a sign of the relationship we have with our staff, and that goes across the board. We have some really quality coaches. We've got another gentleman, Goran Stajic from WA, as our assistant coach, and Mike Harkness, who's a goalkeeping coach from South Australia, and then backed up with a quality medical team. We also have another guy, Tim Palmer, who acts as our sort of strength and conditioning and analyst. And Tim actually is an NPL coach as well. So Tim takes our Sydney-based players 3 nights a week, has them integrated into his NPL program. And on top of that, when COVID hit, built a website. So we had home training programs, and access to the best things, and doesn't take a cent for the work he does. So the dedication on the field is backed by the staff off the field as well. So we have an incredible team manager, Arif, who's from FFA, who just, obviously puts countless hours into the program as well. And then a lot of the fundraising, majority of now is done by Katrina Hicks from FFA as well, who's the general manager of fundraising, who's taken our program to the next level off the field as well. So yeah, it's we're so lucky in that it's all hands on deck. Absolutely.
And the balance now, as you get a little bit older, is to incorporate family. Like, you've got 2 young kids.
Yep.
Yeah. What are their ages and names?
8 and 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
And their names?
So Quinn and Lennon.
Okay. And the balance now, because obviously you need to train, you need to work, and you add 2 young kids to an already busy schedule. Are you enjoying that balance?
Yeah, look, I'd be lying if I said it was perfect all the time, and you find that balance is tricky. I have moments where I think we're flawless in our schedule and what life looks like, and there's other times where you just need to take a step back and relax a little bit and just live life a little bit. But obviously in my role with FFA, I travel a lot, and probably spent a good 4 or 5 months away last year, and then you had travel for football for my football as well. It's a huge challenge for the family, and so when I get home, it's about making that sort of quality time and enjoying where we live and making the most of being home.
Absolutely. Going forward, now you're still a young man, and I don't see you letting up. And I think you're again looking from the outside looking in. I just see this as the beginning. I think you've got so much more to do, and you will do so much more. What are the ambitions and the goals going forward for you personally as a player / coach, but then most importantly for the work that you'll continue to do at FFA off the field?
Yeah, so I think as a player is the way I approach it is, I always want to be that starting player. I want to be the go-to goal scorer. They're my goals, and that's the driving force for me. If I'm not starting games, then I've got to work harder. And the talent coming through is insane. So I'm pushed by these young guys that are technically much better than me, and they're coming through. So I've got to sharpen myself up too.
But it's good that they're coming through, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think, and that's that drives me. It raises the bar for everyone. So I think that's really good. And off the field, within work-wise, I'm really learning a lot at the moment, working with a lot of the other national teams in a team manager capacity, and then working a lot on our fundraising projects as well. So I'm really fulfilled in that and really challenged in a good way. And I think I'm excited about the next few years and where we can take the Pararoos program. And I think after hosting the home friendly last year and the female camp, there's some really exciting projects coming up and talent coming through. So I think hopefully it's the beginning of a good rise for the Pararoos.
Absolutely. It's a great story. It's a great sporting story. Of course, there's the human element to it, which we love as well. I absolutely love your story, and I love the fact that you're prepared to fight for your sport and fight for your nation to make sure that sport continues. It won't go unnoticed, mate. Well done. That's just superb to actually just not take that for an answer and just persist till you got what was best for the team is outstanding. So I wish you so much more luck going forward personally and football-wise professionally. Because of COVID, we're going to have this bit of a lull with a lot of sport, but hopefully at the back end of it, when we start back to watching and participating and training, hopefully there are some more home internationals, some more good crowds, because it looked like a great setup the way it had been done at Cromer Park. So, and I'm sure you'll be heavily involved. But I'd also like to put an asterisk here and say, let's catch up in a couple of years or 18 months and actually see what's happened in that time and see how much the sport's progressed and how much more stress you've had along the way while you're doing that. But I'm sure there'll be lots of satisfaction. So let's not call this the end of the chat. Let's follow it up in a little while and check how it's all going.
That would be brilliant. Much appreciated.
Look, thanks for your time and look forward to catching up again soon, mate. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, George.